Republican senator thought it would be a genius idea to tweet Benito Mussolini quote. Okay, so this is Senator John Cornyn, whatever. You make up your own mind. It says, quote, "We were the first to assert that the more complicated the forms assumed by civilization, the more restricted the freedom of the individual must become. Benito Mussolini." So this started trending on Twitter, and people were like, what? Why are you tweeting Mussolini quotes? And then he later tried to clarify, and he said something like, he's warning against the rise of socialism. But, like, this still isn't clear exactly what he's getting at. Is his argument, hey, I think Benito Mussolini is a socialist, and here's him saying something that is socialist-y, and it shows that socialism is bad? Or is he saying, here's a quote of Benito Mussolini, a fascist going after socialists, and boy, isn't Benito Mussolini spot on about his point on socialists? That's still not clear to me. But here's what we know for sure about Benito Mussolini. He was a fascist, and he, in fact, killed socialists. So what are you doing here, man? I want to read it again. "We were the first to assert that the more complicated the forms assumed by civilization, the more restricted the freedom of the individual must become." So to me, what I think Senator Cornyn is trying to say here is, I think he's trying to say, hey, I think Benito Mussolini is a socialist. Socialism is like fascism, because he's like both of those things. He thinks he's like a fascist and a socialist. And therefore, isn't this such a warning, and isn't this such a good point that we need to avoid today's democratic socialists like AOC and Bernie Sanders? Because this is ultimately their philosophy. Their philosophy is to restrict freedom of the individual. And this, I mean, it's so tortured and it's so confused in so many ways, because at the core of this is his fundamental misunderstanding of politics and his fundamental mixing of definitions and his ability, like so many people on the far right nowadays, especially all the famous pundits, to just, basically say, anything and everything I don't like is left-wing, anything and everything I don't like is socialist, and even, there was a book written by a right-wing hack about maybe 8 years ago now, which was about how, the fascists are all just socialists. It's just all the same thing. And I think that's basically what he's trying to get at here. But the hilarious thing is, to me, the quote itself is dumb. Like, even remove all the context, remove that it was a Republican senator who tweeted it. The more restricted the freedom of the individual must become if the society is complicated. No, it's funny because it's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and it's Bernie Sanders who are the ones who are arguing for more freedom in so many ways. They're the ones who are, leading the charge on let's legalize marijuana and let's end the drug war. They're some of the only people who are against the illegal, unconstitutional NSA spying. They're strong defenders of women's rights and the right to choose. So, again, it stems from a fundamental misunderstanding. There's this argument of, like, the left is for big government and the right is for small government, and therefore the left is against freedom and the right is for more freedom. And that's just bullshit. I mean, there are so many examples of, on social issues, the right being the drug warriors and wanting to crack down on, people who do the wrong substance and throw them in prison, or sell the wrong substance and throw them in prison. They want to control your body when it comes to women's rights and reproductive choice. The lack of, like, nuanced thinking and detailed analysis from John Cornyn, and for anybody on the right who would tweet this and think it's an own of the other side, is just, it's fucking stunning. It's absolutely stunning. And he thinks he's being, like, clever and cute But no, you look almost as dumb as Marco Rubio, who tweeted the fucking murder of Gaddafi as if it's like a good point against Maduro. Like, see, we're going to do that to you too. We're going to be really murderous, psychopathic, genocidal freaks who rape you with a bayonet and then destroy your country and lead to open slave markets. What? Why don't you think we're defenders of human rights? I don't get it. And I would also, as a final point here, I would also argue that the economic philosophy of Bernie and the populist left, the whole point of it is to actually lead to more freedom, because what they're aiming for is equal opportunity, and you could only have equal opportunity. You can only have real freedom if you have equal opportunity. In other words, do you really have freedom if you go bankrupt because of medical bills? Do you really have freedom if you work full time but you don't make enough money to survive and pay for basic necessities? Do you really have freedom if you're up to your eyeballs in student loan debt that you'll never be able to pay off? So again, the framing of, the left is anti-freedom, I couldn't disagree with that more. I think that, if anything, this populist left social democratic ideology really embraces freedom a hell of a lot more than any current strain of ideology on the right. And that's a hill I'm willing to die on, because we have the arguments to back it up. Again, I'm one of the staunchest opponents of illegal NSA spying. I'm one of the biggest defenders of due process. A big defender of an economic system that gives equal opportunity. These are all things that foster freedom. It doesn't crack down on freedom. But I guess in the mind of John Cornyn, if you want to tax people making over $10 million a year a higher marginal tax rate, then somehow you're against freedom. Only if you consider, I think you should only be able to get 3 yachts and not 4 anti-freedom. Then maybe you have a point.